Macron has just poured fuel on the Russia-Ukraine battlefield, yet he is turning around to ask China to put out the fire. The Macron government officially announced his visit to China from December 3 to 5 first to Beijing to discuss major affairs, then to Chengdu with a direct goal of seeing giant pandas. One of the core purposes of his trip is to hope that China will pressure Putin to ceasefire, help Europe hold its ground in Russia-Ukraine negotiations, and boost Europe's right to speak. However, Macron has just signed an agreement with Zelensky to supply Ukraine with 100 Rafale fighter jets. This logic is equivalent to, you hand weapons to the conflict with your front foot, and then expect others to help put out the fire with your back foot. The so-called ceasefire, to put it bluntly, is that Europe has invested huge sums in aiding Ukraine, yet is plagued by high inflation and an energy crisis, and the public is growing tired of the war. But Europe does not want its years of investment to go to waste, let alone be marginalized by the US and Russia on security issues. Therefore, Macron's push for a ceasefire is to give Europe a breather and compete for the discourse power over the peace plan. There have long been voices in France stating plainly that as a permanent member of the UN Security Council and with an extraordinary relationship with Russia, China is fully capable of persuading Putin. Beyond the demands related to Russia and Ukraine, Macron has two other objectives: economic and trade emergency relief, and panda supplementation. France's domestic situation is currently a complete mess. Inflation has soared to 6.2%. Public debt accounts for over 113% of GDP. Calls for Macron to step down are mounting among the French public, and the government he leads is even more struggling to move forward. During his 2023 visit to China, a single order for Airbus large aircraft alone made France rake in huge profits. This time, he hopes history will repeat itself to sign economic and trade cooperation agreements with China in fields such as new energy and aviation, and bring back large orders to create jobs and stimulate the economy so that the French public can see he is still working hard for France's economy. Macron talks about cooperation on his lips. It has turned around to take the lead in stirring up trouble within the EU. Previously, France led the EU in demanding the imposition of an additional tariff of up to 38.1% on Chinese electric vehicles, which is one of the largest trade actions targeting China in EU history. On the Huawei 5G issue, France was also one of the first countries to move toward de-Chinaization and notified operators early on not to renew contracts with Huawei and Chinese investments in sensitive fields such as equipment, semiconductors, and AI have either been delayed or rejected. While trying to reap benefits from China, it is also throwing obstacles in China's way at every turn. This double-minded dealing of saying one thing and doing another. After all, France dares not disobey the United States. As for the trip to Chengdu, anyone with discerning eyes knows it is for the giant pandas. Not long ago, the two giant pandas leased by China to France returned to China for retirement due to old age, and ticket revenue at French zoos plummeted directly. Macron has long had this account all figured out. He specially arranged the Chengdu itinerary this time to ask China to lease to more young pandas to fill the gap, which can both appease domestic public sentiment and earn himself some populist popularity. But pandas are a symbol of friendship. On one hand, you want China to help you stabilize the Russia-Ukraine situation while handing weapons to the conflict. On the other hand, you want to reap economic and trade dividends from China while stirring up trouble within the EU. To curry favor with China, Macron also prepared an airdrop gift package inviting China to attend the G7 summit hosted by France next year. This move is purely borrowing someone else's property to show generosity. The G7 is a group of anti-China countries dominated by anti-EU. Macron thinks that inviting China will serve as a fig leaf. China has already made its position clear: economic and trade cooperation is welcome, but the key to the Russia-Ukraine issue does not lie in China's hands. The ins and outs of the Russia-Ukraine conflict are perfectly clear to the US. Europe, Russia, and Ukraine. How to resolve it should be discussed by themselves. Macron probably fails to understand that in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, China is the real winner. Russia's energy customers and military orders have all shifted to China, and China's drone components and new energy equipment are selling like hotcakes. The more Europe is drained, the more China gains. Where does Macron get the confidence to ask China to cooperate with his calculations? In the final analysis, Macron's visit to China is full of contradictions. He wants a ceasefire yet delivers weapons to the conflict, wants cooperation yet engages in confrontation, wants help yet puts on airs. He both wants to rely on China's economic and trade orders to rescue the domestic economy, and wants to use China's influence to gain benefits in the Russia-Ukraine game. Will China fall for Macron's tricks? I think not. The premise of cooperation is mutual respect and win. minus win results, not harming China's interests while expecting China to clean up your mess. If Macron is truly sincere this time, he should take practical action, stop engaging in trade protectionism against China within the EU, abandon actions that fan the flames of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and sit down to talk about cooperation with genuine sincerity. If he still harbors the intention of exerting pressure, he will probably end up not only failing to secure large economic and trade orders and being unable to lease pandas, but also returning in disgrace to become a laughingstock across Europe.